After years of speculation and rumors, the worst-kept secret in sports is now official. UFC President Dana White is teaming up with Saudi Arabia to launch a new boxing league. Now, there is still a lot to figure out here. The boxing league doesn't yet have a name, they have not signed any fighters, and they have no media rights deal, sponsorship contracts, or even arena hosting agreements. But here is everything that you need to know about TKO's new league so far. The boxing league is a three-way partnership between TKO, the parent company of the UFC and WWE, Sela, a Saudi Arabian hospitality company specializing in experiences and events, and Turki Al-Sheikh, chairman of the Saudi General Entertainment Authority, owner of Ring Magazine, and a major boxing-powered player. TKO is not committing any cash to the league. Instead, they will be paid a $10 million plus annual fee to operate the business by promoting fights, hosting events, negotiating media rights deals, and managing other parts of the business. TKO will also have the opportunity to earn additional equity in the league based on the business's success over the next 5 years, aka sweat equity. UFC President and CEO Dana White and WWE President Nick Khan will lead operations for the new boxing league. White will likely lead the boxing operations and promotion, while Khan handles business efforts like a new media rights deal, just as he has done in his role for the WWE. The easiest way to think about this new league is that it will essentially apply the UFC model to boxing. Dana White says the league will sign 150 to 160 boxers in multiple weight classes, each with their own belt. Similar to the UFC, there will also be a transparent ranking system and events held worldwide, leveraging tourism budgets. Dana White also told the Associated Press, quote, "I'm going to take this thing everywhere. We're going all over the US. We're going to Mexico, Canada, Brazil, Australia, the UK, the list goes on. Just like UFC, you can't build a boxing business without America. You have to have the United States to have a truly successful sport," end quote. Many people have already started to downplay yesterday's announcement. Launching a new league without a name will do that. However, I actually think this is a really big deal, and people like combat sports journalist Ariel Helwani seem to agree. Here's what Helwani had to say on the magnitude of TKO's entry into boxing.
You have Dana White, who's arguably the best promoter of the past 20, 30 years, leading the charge. Like, all the pieces are there. All the pieces are there. You have Nick Khan, who has all the relationships with the networks. You have the endless funds of Turkey and company, Sela, who is the sort of like, you know, the sports entity under this public investment fund in Saudi Arabia. It's all right there. Boxing as we know it is going to change. This is seismic. This is massive. This is mammoth. It is gigantic. And TKO just got a hell of a lot bigger and stronger.
Now, boxing is a unique sport because it's already incredibly popular and still has a lot of opportunity. But the problem is that the structure is so confusing. The average sports fan has no idea how boxing works today. No commissioner or single governing body is ensuring the sport grows over time, and there are vultures at every possible corner, as promoters solely want to maximize earnings off a single event without ever reinvesting any of that money back into the sport. Boxing also has multiple organizational sanctioning bodies, like the World Boxing Council, the International Boxing Federation, the World Boxing Association, and the World Boxing Organization. This system means that there are typically multiple champions across the same weight classes, and the fragmented approach makes it nearly impossible to schedule the best-on-best fights consistently. For example, there are currently 4 different welterweight champions. Imantos Stanios is the WBA champion. Mario Barrios has the WBC belt. Duran Ennis is the IBF title holder, and Brian Norman Jr. owns the WBO championship. The same can be said about several other weight classes, and it gets even more confusing when interim belts are added due to a fighter getting sick or injured. No matter what they might say publicly, even boxing purists would admit that the UFC model is better than boxing. Rather than allowing fighters, managers, and promoters to determine what fights actually occur, the UFC has a brand. Its ranking system lets fans know exactly where each fighter stands at any given point, and when a champion is crowned, that's the end of the story. There are no ifs, ands, or buts. That person is the undisputed champion. Here's Dana White on ESPN's First Take explaining how he wants to apply the UFC's championship model and ranking system to boxing.
I've been talking a lot of smack about boxing for a long time, and now here we are. And you know, I'm looking forward to implementing changes and things that I think would definitely help the sport. Simple things like, you know, the best fight the best. How about that? You see a lot of guys. There's a lot of talent that we've been looking at out there right now that nobody knows about. And what I would love to do is build this thing from the ground up the way that we did the UFC. When we originally bought the UFC, we had 12 contracts. Nobody knew who anybody was. You have everybody start fighting everybody. when you get to the top 5, there's no denying who the best 5 guys in the world are, and then they all fight it out to see who's the world champion. Get rid of all the 5 different champions and 5 different sanctioning organizations, and one. It'll just be one.
The major difference between boxing and the UFC, and a big reason why the UFC model has never been applied in the past, is the Muhammad Ali Boxing Reform Act. Enacted in 2000, the Ali Act aims to protect professional boxers from unfair business practices. It essentially prohibits coercive contracts from promoters. This means promoter A can't force promoter B's fighter to sign a long-term deal with promoter A so they can fight promoter A's boxer. The Ali Act also doesn't allow promoters to compensate any employee of a sanctioning body, which has essentially stopped boxing promoters from creating their own belts and titles. And the Ali Act also requires the disclosure of all earnings generated by a promoter for a fight that a boxer is involved in. For example, Matchroom Sport promoter Eddie Hearn has to disclose all of the event earnings to Anthony Joshua for a fight that Joshua headlines. The UFC, on the other hand, has spent millions and a lot of time ensuring that the Ali Act doesn't apply to its organization. And TKO chairman Ari Emanuel has even hinted in the past that they might try to reduce its influence or eliminate the act altogether for their new boxing league.
Can you revive boxing? Where is boxing right now, I guess, compared to maybe 20 years ago?
Well, I think you got the Ali Act that I think hurt it. Hopefully, who knows what's going to happen with the Ali Act. And then Dana's got a plan for boxing. We'll see. You know, there's a lot of work, a lot of wood that's got to be chopped there, but we're looking at it pretty seriously.
Some people have speculated that Dana White's relationship with President Trump could play a role here, but that seems unlikely. Amending the Ali Act would require a change in federal law, and while the law has complicated the sport, boxers are making more money than ever before, making it tough to argue that it's been a net negative for everyone involved. That's not to say TKO's new boxing league can't be successful without getting rid of the Ali Act. It would just be much easier to be successful if TKO was able to control titles, sign multi-year contracts, and dictate what fights get made, similar to the model they have at the UFC. Even if TKO and its partners can't influence a change in the Ali Act, this still feels like a massive shift in the boxing landscape. TKO already controls 2 of the world's most popular sports properties, WWE and the UFC. They can potentially collaborate to host events, and don't be surprised if the media rights are sold as a package deal. Here's Ariel Helwani again on what a joint UFC and TKO Boxing League media deal could look like, and how WWE President Nick Khan could play a critical role in brokering that very deal.
And don't be surprised with Top Rank leaving, this new league comes in and replaces Top Rank on ESPN. And don't be surprised when they re-sign with ESPN, which in some way, shape, or form I think they will. A part of the deal is to bring in this league as well to be the boxing entity on ESPN. The guy who cut the deal for Top Rank to be on ESPN was Nick Khan. No one knows those people better than him. When I got to ESPN, everyone was like, "Oh, you're a Nick Khan guy? He's your agent?" He, for all intents and purposes, was the most powerful non-ESPN employee in the company, if you get what I'm saying. Represented them all. He could very easily cut this deal and say, "You want UFC? You gotta do a deal for this league." And by the way, ESPN would gladly do it. Why not? Why wouldn't you want the new shiny toy? Out with the old, in with the new.
The other interesting angle here is that Saudi Arabia's Turki Al-Sheikh owns The Ring magazine. Now, The Ring is a boxing publication, not an official sanctioning body, but it releases its own rankings and has awarded its own championship titles for over 100 years. Saudi Arabia has already spent billions of dollars on boxing mega fights over the last decade, including Tyson Fury's heavyweight championship matches against Alexander Usyk, MMA superstar Francis Ngannou's fights with Fury and Anthony Joshua, and even Jake Paul's match against Tommy Fury. Saudi Arabia's participation in the project also ensures the league has plenty of money for the foreseeable future through its public investment fund, worth nearly $1 trillion today. As for TKO, this is a win-win situation. They get a guaranteed payment north of $10 million annually and can make even more money through equity if things go well, potentially unlocking the public company's next major growth channel. And as for Dana White, his goal is clear. To borrow a line from Conor McGregor, Dana White isn't here to take part in boxing, he's here to take over.